All right, welcome to another episode of Cinema Sandwich. I'm Jerry O'Keefe.
Matthew Van Groningen.
And David Risner.
So today what we're going to do, the plan is to do the first of what should be a recurring segment on our podcast, which would be to review two movies, an original and a remake. So we'll kick that off today with Oldboy. So we'll be talking about the 2003 original version by Park Chan-wook and the remake, which just came out a couple weeks ago, made by Spike Lee. So, yeah, I guess we really didn't talk about how to structure this. I would just say maybe do a brief kind of comment on how all three of us felt about both films, and then kind of get into comparing them against each other. Starting with the original, I've seen it a couple times now, and I think it's great. It's a great film. It does a great job of walking the line and never being. I never felt like it could very easily slip into exploitation, and I never really felt like it did that. I know, Dave, you just saw it for the first time when we...
Yep, when we went to the music box, I saw it for the first time, and I thought the original is very good. Everything's well thought out. It has a good flow to it. It never feels long at any parts, and I don't think it's like a masterpiece or anything, but it is very good. It has a good catch at the end there. And that's what I liked about it and everything. And then we're going to talk about the new one right now too? Or are we going to go around with the old one first?
Yeah, I think just kind of give thoughts on the original first.
Cool.
I think the original is a masterpiece. I saw it a couple times throughout the years, and I really wish. Seeing again on the big screen, really made me remember why I loved it so much. I wish I would have put it on my list when we discussed influential films, because I forgot how much this film really changed my perspective. And I really consider the original a masterpiece.
Yeah, I really like it. This last time. The print, I don't know if it was the print too. They kind of had a crappy print at Music Box, I thought.
Yeah. Also, the soundtrack was off when we saw it at Music Box, but that's here nor there. That's probably projection problems and stuff like that. I can let those slide.
Yeah, because one of the things I like about it, I really like the look of the film, and that kind of hurt it. At least my experience that time watching it. But yeah, I really like the look. It's got some really good quirky moments in it, and humor too is. Mm-hmm. He does a really good job of putting little bits of humor here and there that are needed because the subject matter is pretty dark.
And the acting's so good in the original. Everyone seems right for their parts.
Yeah, the only thing I felt about the original, which I still feel about it every time I see it, is the actor playing Woo Jin, who is the man who's out for revenge. To me, he seems a little bit too young compared to Odae-soo. They look.
That's true. Yeah.
Supposedly they were in school together, and I don't know. I guess maybe I'm thinking more of along the lines of American schools, where pretty much you're only in maybe a 5-year gap between each, the top grade and the lower grade in a school. But maybe this school was different and it had a wider.
Yeah, being a private school in Asia, I don't know what the rules are.
Well, you also got to think too that Odae-soo was been in a prison for 15 years and not really well taken care of, and has aged terribly from stress and being imprisoned, and he's a multimillionaire or whatever. I mean, he's probably been kept.
Sure, he takes great care of himself.
Yeah, they show him throughout the movie, doing exercise and getting treatments and stuff like that. I mean, he could just be in really great shape, really great condition.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, that kind of reminds me, I guess we shouldn't just go with the assumption that anyone listening to this has seen either version of Oldboy. So if you haven't seen it, the basic premise is there's a man who's kidnapped, put into, it's not really a traditional prison. He wakes up basically in a hotel room, but with a metal door that he can't come out of. They feed him every day.
They groom him, but they knock him unconscious and, not take advantage like rape, but they
they take advantage of him.
Don't they swab his DNA and use it on a murder scene? Yeah. They do some hypnosis on him. They mess with him while he's under gas, so he kind of hallucinates sometimes. But
It's true.
And his only contact with the outside world is a television set that's in his room. Other than that, nobody talks to him. He's not given.
And we'll talk about the parallels a lot, because the parallels in the original make sense, as where this new one, the parallels have no reason to even be in the movie.
Yeah. Also, if you haven't seen the original, probably stop listening. If you haven't seen either one, probably stop listening to this, because we're probably going to go into a hardcore spoiler. And one of the reasons I was excited to see this movie on a screen with Dave, who had never seen this before, is because I remember just hearing how great the original Oldboy was when it first came out, and being knocked out by the twist ending. And I don't know, it's such an unexpected twist, and it's hard to be surprised, I feel like, in this day and age. And I don't know, that twist has been one of my favorite movie twists. So
what are you telling me, that the Village didn't get you?
I think the easiest thing we could say for anybody who didn't want any spoilers is, I think we're all in agreement, the 2003 original is a much better film. So
it's night and day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So seek out that one if you're gonna check it out. Definitely see the 2003 original.
But yeah, so now should we go into
2013?
Yeah, 2013, 10 years
10
later.
years later, just like the real movie.
Yeah, so what were you, for both of you, what was your feeling going into this? Like, how did you approach it? Because for me, I know when I first heard that there was going to be a remake, I thought it was a terrible idea, because I just figured there's no way an American audience is going to buy where this story goes. Then I was worried that they were just going to trash it to make it work for an American audience. I didn't like the fact Spike Lee was on it. Not that I think he's a bad filmmaker. I've only seen two of his movies, really, Malcolm X and Do the Right Thing, which they're both good films, but I just did not feel he was the director that you should put on this project. But then the casting of Josh Brolin actually made me think that maybe it could work, and when I saw the trailer, it looked like they were faithful enough to the original, where then I was interested in seeing it. So I kind of went from thinking it was going to be a train wreck right off the bat to actually wanting to see it.
No, I felt the exact same way as you with everything, except I didn't really mind Spike Lee as director. I mean, he has some of his own unique visual style, so I'm like, all right, well, he might bring some of that. And I mean, he usually adds a sense of, stuff involving New York and racial overtones and stuff like that. So I thought maybe he might bring something unique and fresh to the premise that might make it a more, modern and post 9/11 type movie. And I don't know, it just felt like it could have been directed by anybody. I mean, they could have put anyone behind the camera.
Go ahead, finish.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, but yeah, I was still interested to see it. And someone told me they went to go see the remake first, and I had heard bad reviews from everyone when it first came out, and I still wanted to see it and get my own opinion on it, but I kind of in the back of my mind already had a feeling that it was going to be not that good, and I tried to keep as open-minded as possible, because my friend made the comment that said, oh, it seems like you already made up your mind that this one was going to be bad. And so I tried to stay as objective as possible, and it still didn't work for me.
For me, what drew me to it, obviously that we saw the original, so I was open to seeing this one and seeing how it compared. But, I mean, the actors did draw me in. I mean, I like Elizabeth Olsen. Brolin's usually good in most of his stuff. And Samuel L. Jackson's okay. I could do without him sometimes, but this was... he wasn't good in this, obviously, but I don't know. And then the cinematographer drew me to it too, because he's obviously doing some great work right now. Sean Bobbitt, and I could care less who directed it for the most part, but obviously now, after seeing it, my feelings were that anyone could have directed it, because it was that awful of directing.
And there's nothing that reminded me of Spike Lee's movies at all.
No, yeah,
Nothing.
He had no signature on it, none whatsoever. And I don't know, there were remember there were camera moves at times, some of that overhead stuff moved funny,
Yeah, and that's sort of traces of him.
Yeah.
He does kind of that weird camera work sometimes, but it wasn't enough to like leave a like wow, like this definitely feels like a Spike Lee film. With the one thing that a lot of people mention is that usually he puts a Spike Lee joint on his films, and this movie actually started saying it's a Spike Lee film. So a lot of people say apparently. Like, well, that should show you right away that like he really didn't want like that. This feels like an impersonal movie to him,
or it just didn't live up to what he thought it was going to be. I guess making
supposedly there's a 140-minute cut that he preferred, and the studios didn't want.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to save this film. We'll get into these we'll get into spoilers and explain what the problems were.
Yeah, and Matt and I were talking about that Spike Lee joint film thing, and I read an interview with him where all he would say, to repeated questions, he would say, it's a really difficult thing. I can't remember exactly how he put it, but it was this real vague answer, like, working with a studio is a difficult thing. And then they would ask him another question, working with a studio is a difficult thing. It's like, well, so I don't know what.
I wonder if they had all sorts of problems then.
Yeah, I've seen a couple movies by Spike Lee, and I don't mind them. I like 25th Hour.
Yeah, 25th
Inside Man wasn't bad. Do the Right Thing's good. I haven't seen as much as I like, but sometimes Spike Lee comes off as kind of a pretentious bastard. He seems like he.
No, he definitely does. His Kickstarter made it seem that way.
Oh my God, his Kickstarter is awful. Because his Kickstarter, where you should be talking about what makes your project so unique and why you should contribute it, he just says, "Oh, I'm Spike Lee. I made a lot of great movies. That's why you should donate." Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hate on Spike Lee too bad. But
no, it's okay. He makes a lot of money. He's living better lives.
Yeah.
And he's still got to be responsible for what ended up on screen.
Yeah.
But so this film, I don't know. It just
What most caught you off guard about it, or disappointed you?
It's a good question too.
Well, the thing overall, why I didn't think it didn't work, and what made the original work so well, is I brought this up in things I posted online. Is why I love the original is because it seems like such a straight up revenge, like a revenge movie, revenge thriller. And in a revenge movie, you see the protagonist, something bad happened to him by somebody else, and you wanted that satisfying moment where he finally gets his revenge. In this movie, it kind of becomes revenge between two different people, and how kind of like that. The toll it takes on both of their lives, seeking revenge on each other, almost between the two main characters, and kind of the moral gray areas that it brings up between both of them. And this movie, I felt like had more interest in being a straight up revenge movie than exploring those moral consequences between both of their actions. Like this movie, the remake felt like trying to go more A to B and just ending than trying to dig deeper into the psyche of revenge. And
yeah, it didn't seem to have any interest in trying to be different or original in any way, or throw something in there that just would hold your interest. Just interesting in general. It didn't seem like a very interesting film. And the performances across the board, I thought that's what most shocked me. The acting was bad.
Yeah, it was atrocious.
And Josh Brolin, like I mentioned, when I heard he was cast, it uplifted my opinion of how this film could be, and I thought he was terrible. A lot of people are talking about Charlton Copley, and for good reason, but
yeah,
Josh
awful
Brolin
too.
was just as bad. He was just as bad, but for different reasons. But
there wasn't a single actor in it like that wowed me at all. Nothing at all.
And that's what this movie needed. It needed for that payoff of the movie to work, to have you emotionally attached. And maybe it's partially because the Korean version has those sort of no-name actors that you're kind of like, I don't know, maybe. I don't know.
But look at another recent remake, like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Even Fincher's still executed those things like the way it needed to at times and pulled that stuff off. It's just Fincher's version just didn't feel as fulfilling in the end as where the originals did.
But that's the thing with Fincher's one too. I don't want to get off topic, but Fincher is look at the original girl with the dragon tattoo and the original Oldboy, and look at how kind of crappy they like filming, like how like they don't look sharp, or
No, they're grittier.
they're really gritty. They don't look that well shot, but they're I thought they're great overall thrillers, and the newer versions look much better, have much better star power, but they feel so clinical and just they don't feel any emotional attachment with the audience whatsoever.
And for this remake, I felt everything was done in just a lazy way.
Yes, very.
Like I knew we were in trouble. For me, I knew I was in trouble with the first 10, 15 minutes, just the way that they were establishing Joe Doucette's character when he's that scene where he's screaming on the phone at his ex-wife.
Yeah.
It was so over the top, and I was like, where is this coming from? Like, this is so bizarre. It was like the most obvious way to make this guy seem like a jerk. It's like, yeah, scream at your wife, be a real
Be an alcoholic, be just a terrible person.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like in the original, he's drunk at the beginning and he's out of control inside a police station, but it does what it needs there. You don't need to see him like at work being a dick to anybody.
Yeah, and with that scene in the original, I got the impression that, well, number one, it was funny. I thought it was a funny scene.
Funny.
You do get the impression that this guy has he's got some issues. I mean, this guy obviously doesn't have it all together. It's his daughter's birthday, and he's out boozing it up with his buddy. But I didn't think that he was like a total asshole. You know, he's drunk, and the other excellent thing about it was that film starts with him hanging onto the guy's tie when he's hanging. You know, he's got the guy who was up on the roof where he ended up waking up when he was finally set free. There's the guy up there who's going to commit suicide, and he's holding on to him. So you see what he looks like the very first time you see him. You're seeing him after he's already gone through this ordeal, and then it just does this quick cut to him sitting there in the police station, and it's on his face. And for a second, the first time I saw it, at least, I didn't even know it was the same guy.
Yeah.
So it did a really good job of establishing what this guy is going to go through. And in the new one, I actually thought Brolin looked better when he got out 10, 20 years. It's first of all, it's supposed to be 20 years. It's like, well, he looks practically the same for being 20 years. And he shaves his head and looked like he actually lost weight when he was in there. Like, he looks the same, if not better, which just didn't work.
That was such a glaring error on the most part. That, I mean, we live in an age where there's movies like Looper that make Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis look kind of like the same person with makeup effects, and no one thinks to try to age up Josh Brolin at all. But he looks like a 40-year-old man when he gets captured, and he looks like a 40-year-old man when he gets out, and it's like almost comical that like he could have been in this prison for weeks and just letting out and been like, oh, you've been in there for 20 years. Like, I mean, there's no, I felt like there's no progression of time whatsoever. Like, he should have been 60 based on like the opening.
Yeah, it's such a weird choice to advance the amount of time that he was in prison. Like, even if they had shortened it to 10 years, that's still a damn long time to be locked up for 10 years. But they go to 20, which, I was sitting there, so I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, okay, well, if they're trying to say he was 25, he didn't look 25, but then he could be 45 now. It just didn't. Yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure when he's investigating his past at his school, he said he was in the class of 86, I want to say.
That's right, yeah.
And then he ends up he gets captured in 1993, and that's not a far gap. And they show a young Josh Brolin in like a flashback, and he's aged
hard.
Terribly.
Yeah.
Don't drink.
But also like Copley ages hard too. From if you think about it, like he aged hard from just like that amount of time, because the youth casting of him doesn't look anything like him whatsoever. They just went to Europe and were like, it was cast a Norwegian kid.
I know.
Call it a day.
What do you guys think of the comparing the two segments from both movies when he's imprisoned, as far as how they compare to each other? That's probably the least. He was the closest to the original, I guess. I didn't mind some of the new things they put in there, like him finding the mouse. It was a little over the top what the end of that sequence was, of him having his little pet mouse. But
Mr. Bojangles.
It was pretty much the same. There were some things I didn't. The one thing I didn't like was the change from the ants. he was hallucinating about ants being all over his body in the original. And this one, the painting, instead of that crazy face on the wall, it was a bellhop. And then the bellhop he hallucinates that the bellhop is there, which would have been okay. But I thought if you're going to do that, it should have been a recurring. It should have happened more
Yeah, it
than
happens
just once.
yeah.
So it was really off-putting to me. Like the ants only happening once makes sense to me. Like it happens, you get the idea that he's
And I thought
mentally
that was
breaking
creepy
down.
in the original, seeing
Yeah, definitely.
because that freaks me out. Stuff like that freaks me out.
Yeah, and then they found a way to tie it in later on too when they introduced Mido.
Yeah,
But in this one, yeah, it was just kind of weird. Like
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is a different take. Like he's hallucinating that this guy can talk to him, but then he's just gone, never shows up again.
and a small bit of trivia, that is actually, I read Spike Lee's brother that plays that bellhop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Easter egg.
Yeah. But I don't know, the thing with the mouse, like I thought that was a nice addition, but then like the fact that they kill the mouse, but like the fact that he does all these other things, like, you know, he starts to tunnel out, he writes all these letters and he does all these things, but they won't let him have the mouse. Like they kill the mouse to like teach him a lesson, I guess. I don't know. But like I don't get why they went that extreme. But like why didn't they like tear up his letters, or, you know, do other like not, why didn't they let him have other freedoms or do other things? I don't know.
Because they're poor prison guards. And they just don't know how to mess with people.
I guess so. But I also thought that crime show edition was just terrible.
Awful.
Him watching that crime show was terrible.
It was like they're, you know, like spoofing Unsolved Mysteries or whatever, but it was still awful in the way it was. It was awful reason. It had an awful connection. It just was stupid.
I mean, yeah, we'll talk about the ending, but like, I mean, I guess if you're a neglectful alcoholic dad, but I mean, right off the bat, I thought that his older version of his daughter looked nothing like him.
Yeah.
Like, seeing his wife and seeing him, I don't know how they could have produced that child and how he could have been duped into thinking that was his kid.
Mm-hmm.
I guess eating dumplings for 10 years will make you like think whatever. But I don't know. I think they picked the worst. I thought she was an Asian girl at first. I don't know. But yeah, that was terrible. And I thought
Go ahead.
I thought the fight scene was not that great.
But we're going to talk about the football players?
That
Fight scene?
Yeah, I definitely.
How awful was that?
I forgot about that.
He stumbles across a group of football players in a field and proceeds to beat the living shit out of them for no reason.
Yeah, that's another example of a direct. I really don't think there's one example of anything in this movie where you can say, and number one, this is a comparison podcast, but even going into a remake, you can't just completely push the original out of your head. But anytime you compare anything in these two movies, I don't think there's one thing in the original that I would say did it better or that I liked. And that scene was, it was just so cheesy and terrible.
He's like, get your hands off her, and then he proceeds to just, like, end the life of like 6 kids.
He
for no reason.
He cripples
He snaps
them.
that one guy's leg like right in the middle. It was no reason. He stumbles across him, and who runs up and just punches someone in the face anyways? That football player runs over and just jacks him.
It was like they felt we got to put that scene in where he shows that he can fight. We'll just connect it to the same time he's walking away when he first gets free. Yeah,
which is ridiculous because he is he's running through a football field chasing after a girl in like a short little kimono carrying a yellow umbrella and a sunny day. And he like grabs her to try to talk to her, and like you said, a football player runs up to her and goes, "Hey, get your hands off her!" Like, when does that ever? Why?
I've never seen that happen, and it never will happen.
Yeah, the original made more sense because he sought out a fight.
Yeah, he's looking
because all he's done is trained, and it also, again, we mentioned how Park Chan-wook did a good job of putting little things with humor in there, and that was, the line where can 15 years of imaginary training work out, and then he beats all the guys down, and he's like, yes, it can.
Yeah.
But then that made sense, too, because those were also, like, some street punks, and they just kind of get into a little brawl, like a little scuffle, and, I mean, he takes them all down.
Yeah, and he purposely antagonized them.
Yeah, and they're all kind of the same like body. Like, I mean, they're not muscle bound guys. They're all kind of the same body type almost. Like this one, he like UFC fights like these perfectly toned athletes. I don't know how that happened. But
he goes like straight like Muay Thai mixed with a prison fight just on some football players in a field.
And it
was just so out of place. It was like, what is the point of this?
And I don't believe that if you're recently getting out of a locked cabinet after if you're recently getting out of like a locked box or whatever and just being kind of disoriented, that you'd be so ready to snap into attack mode like that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, again, lazy. It's just lazy filmmaking.
But I was thinking about the hallway fight.
Hallway fight is awful too.
Yeah.
What was the point?
Yeah, so I didn't expect him to try to exactly remake the hallway, but number one, it was obvious they tried to make it look like it was one take, but you could see little stutters into where the cuts were, which that was another question they had asked him, where why didn't you do the hallway scene in one take? And making a film's difficult. It was like the same thing. I don't know. So I don't know what he was doing. Yeah, they had to move down from one level to the next, but it didn't have that intensity that at the end of the original one. Everyone looks out of breath, like you would be in a real fight, as they worked their way down the hallway. In this one, you didn't. It just looked like a badly staged fight. Like I saw all these instances of people missing, like they didn't even connect. Didn't even look like they had connected.
This the original, like why that's such a classic is because, like, I mean, it is well choreographed and it's real because Odesu does take like punishment and like he's ganged up on a lot, but like he believably holds off like multiple guards. And in this one, it becomes across as this like side-scrolling video game where I don't know, it felt like it was sped up and he's just like clocking these different guys. And then randomly he gets stabbed.
Did you say this one felt like a side-scrolling video game, or
the
original?
The newer one felt
the newer
like.
Oh, I thought the newer one was nowhere near a video game. The original's closer to a video game.
I thought the newer one felt like this like sped up like weird video game.
I thought the new one just felt like a badly done fight scene. Because that's where the original does have that whole side-scrolling scene, almost like a Double Dragon or something like that.
I sum that up partially to decisions by Spike Lee, but it's another example of the difference between, and I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but Choi Min-sik and Josh Brolin. Choi Min-sik just goes manic at times in the original, and that's an example where, I mean, I'm sure he was like trying to catch his breath after each time they would try to film that, whereas, and it comes through on the screen. He's just a maniac, whereas I never got that impression from Josh Brolin.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I 100% agree with that. But, I mean, yeah, I could see, like, the original is, like, the side-scrolling video game, but that's more so, I mean, it's a lot more realistic, whereas this one I felt like Josh Brolin, like, 1, 2, 3 punch comboed, like, every character. Like, he never... And then they throw in that guy running in and stabbing him with a knife out of nowhere, like, just to add... I thought that was ridiculous. That he... like, that one guy just, like, runs in and is like, and stabs him and runs away. Like, why?
I can't remember. How did it end with the elevator? I know how the new one ended. The original was, everyone came in the elevator with him, and then the doors open.
Yeah, it's the same way in the new one. That he sees, like, a group of people in the elevator, and it cuts to the scene where he, like, he stabs someone. Like, there's someone standing in the front of the elevator, and he
that's right.
Stabs him.
And the original also has when he sees the people in the elevator, he just starts to do this crazy smile, which made it work all the more. And that also leads us to Samuel L. Jackson's involvement, which I didn't like at all.
Yeah, I don't know why he's in the movie.
I don't know why he's in there. And again, there's this level of bringing intensity to a scene for an actor. And he didn't bring it at all. I never once felt that he was actually scared or in any kind of jeopardy.
No.
And the tortures between the two movies that are being done, the torture in this was really weak, in my opinion. And he said he was cutting. Yeah, so he's cutting little sections of the skin out of his neck, and I'm going to rip your head off with my bare hands. I was like, all right, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the original, he's pulling the guy's teeth out with a hammer,
Mhm.
which is very cringeworthy. That's one of two scenes in the original that I can't always keep my eyes on the screen when it's happening.
Yeah, and there's a thing with the original too that I liked that could have been okay with Samuel L. Jackson's character is in the original he kind of is this this side character who kind of plays both sides, where he obviously is in charge of the main character being locked up, and then he gets tortured and wants revenge for him, and then he gets paid off by the villain to not hurt him and torture him, but then the villain takes his hand off in the original, and then he kind of doesn't Ode sue. He goes back to him, and they kind of are like, oh yeah, enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I kind of like that. And then Samuel L. Jackson's just this weird skirt wearing, mohawked, I don't know, but like he was just in there, I feel like, for
just to have star
favor.
power.
Yeah.
Definitely some weird costuming choices in this movie. Him, Sharlto Copley's character, I don't know what he was wearing.
Going to like vampire, Nosferatu, walk around like a zombie thing.
And his accent, I don't know.
Yeah, I understand the concept of him like living in Europe, but he lived here before that as a kid, so his accent should be somewhat more Americanized, I would think.
Yeah, the comparison
he moves over to Europe as a teenager, like you already have an American accent at that point, right? I don't know, it doesn't matter.
Think?
Yeah, what do I know about accents?
Yeah, the comparison to a cheesy Bond villain is perfect for him because it seems like that's what he was channeling. I don't understand why he thought that was the angle to take and why he was allowed to continue doing it.
Mm-hmm.
He needed like a cat to be
to
stroking
all the time. Yeah,
maybe he was given some. Maybe Jodie Foster gave him some tips on the set of Elysium. He's like, oh, I'm going to be in this movie. She was like,
do a weird accent.
Look at what I've been doing here.
She's like, the key to being a villain: constantly switch up your accent. I don't know. I didn't buy the chemistry between Brolin and Elizabeth Olsen.
No,
not one bit. They never fell in love
for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
The original did that so much better, and it was a little. It's strange when you think about it, but because they're almost immediately attracted to each other, and there seems to be like a cultural thing there too, a little bit, because she makes a comment to him in the original where she says he kind of comes on to her because he's been locked up for 15 years, hasn't even been around a woman. And that was another great moment of humor when he repeats that line, can 15 years of imaginary training work out? And he rushes her, and she just hits him on the head with a knife, and he slinks away and says no. But because she makes that comment like, well, I did bring you back to my apartment, so almost like she's obligated to sleep with the guy just because she brought him back to her place. But they did a much better job by doing that, I think, instead of trying to have this make you believe that there would be some slow, normal relationship progression between the two. They did a real good job of very quickly establishing that she in the original, it appears that she had no friends. Nobody else ever comes around. They had already used the ants to establish someone kind of going crazy, and she brings it up. It was like, oh, you saw ants, and they kind of reveal that
for
she
loneliness. Like or I think when you hallucinate ants, it's like a connection to being lonely, like extremely lonely.
Yeah, so with that one shot of a flashback of her sitting on a train, she sees a giant ant sitting there. You realize right away this girl's very lonely, doesn't have any friends, and that just helps you believe that she would fall for this guy and do so really quickly. So then that was out of the way, and you just know, yeah, there's already an attraction here.
And they have little moments in the apartment, like figuring out the puzzle of it all, where like they do it together and stuff like that. And they have those little moments of them like connecting during all that, going out and like getting dumplings and stuff like that. And that never seemed like it ever happened with Elizabeth Olsen and Brolin. They never like had those little moments of like falling in love with each other too, to add on to it.
And the hypnosis thing in the original is kind of I don't know how I feel about it, but it works because they show how they kind of use, like, there's obviously an instant thing between the two main characters in the original, but they use the hypnosis to kind of give them a little push to get closer together. And in the remake, they're just banking on pure faith that somehow Josh Brolin will run into Elizabeth Olsen and she'll want to take care of him and, help him out.
Yeah, the reason to get them to run into each other is just have an umbrella at the charity or whatever she works at, helping homeless people, and that makes the connection between them. She's like, oh, here's my card, call me. Like,
he could have never called her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's like you're supposed to believe that just because she
actually he didn't call her. Michael Impoli calls her because he's passed out on the ground. He's like, oh, he's got a card in his hand. I'm gonna call this number instead of the police. It's absurd.
But I mean, like, there's for 20 years of planning this revenge, I thought they could have used a little more
poorly planned.
Yeah, it was poorly planned.
Yeah, and I never once felt that she was really, like I said, Mido in the original. I did feel that I could see her being lonely and falling in love with him, whereas in this one they make all these comments about how she did drugs and she was screwed up, but you don't get that impression of her now. In fact, she seems to have her life together pretty well. And especially, like you mentioned, they didn't have all those little moments between them. And then there's that scene where she's almost raped at her house, but then it's like, oh, okay, I'll still hang around you. It's like, nobody would do that. They'd be like, get the hell out of my life. I was almost raped by these weirdos who come to my house.
And in the original, he journals about his life in prison, and in the remake, it's more about he writes these letters to his daughter, and I think the was it Mido?
Yeah, Mido.
She reads the journals and kind of sympathizes with him, and I don't know. I feel like that developed their bond more, and it's kind of weird that she reads all these letters to his daughter, and it's like, oh, I'm not busy this weekend. I can help. I can help you out if you're not doing anything, or if you need someone to tag along. I don't know. This is just a weird connection, and I think I brought this up to Dave. Is that there's little scenes too of emotion in the original that I really liked that that kind of showed that emotional connection. I think he wants to go start doing stuff on his own, and Mido chases after him, and he turns around and you see this look of he's crying and he's really anguished, and Josh Brolin shows no emotion really throughout the entire movie. He never shows that towards the end he does, but he never really
he tries.
Yeah, he never really shows any kind of emotion. There's that scene where in the original, you brought it up already, where he tries to come on to her and gets rejected, and it needed a scene like that.
Needed a lot of scenes.
It never had a scene he was so single-minded in his mission of revenge that there was never that connection where he could have just started over and fell in love with this girl, and in the original. I think they bring up that he could start over and run away with her, but he'd never know the truth. And in this one, he's like, I don't give a shit about anything else. I want revenge, and that's it.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the switch with the twist at the end?
Ugh.
Awful.
It is interesting. I like that. It made kind of sense that they made it a father-daughter thing, and that that was his revenge, was to be with his daughter and know how it feels. But what bothers me about it is that Brolin doesn't reveal until he's out of prison and free that he never knew that the other man was her father, and so it never it never had any effect on he supposedly ruins her reputation, and everyone thinks she's a whore. But I would have thought that would have been more in the original. The reason she's so upset and kills herself is because the rumor is that she's sleeping with her brother and got pregnant, and that's a horrible thing to be attached to your name, and I could understand why you'd want to kill yourself because of that. But apparently in the remake, Josh Brolin's oh, hey, this girl, I saw her sleeping with a dude, what a whore, and that ruins her whole life. And I thought that, I thought that was kind of ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and then the father just takes everybody out. He was a murder-suicide, which I could, like you were saying, they made the father-daughter connection, which is an interesting route to go. And it could have worked, but then when they show the murder-suicide, it's just one of the most ridiculous things I've seen, where the father comes in the room and the kids are just dropping their pants, basically, for their dad.
I laughed in theater. I thought that was laughable.
And the fact that the kid doesn't hear the father shooting a gun twice in the house. He wakes up downstairs. He's like, "Oh, Dad, hey, did you hear those loud bangs on the second floor?"
He was more worried
let me take my pants.
more worried about unzipping his pants. Oh, Dad's here. Which, not to make light of incest and molestation, but it was just ridiculous. Like, what, every time the dad comes in the room, you got to drop your pants? Is this a pre-established rule in this household? And then, it doesn't work because of the acting that goes on. Josh Brolin tried to be all dramatic and dropped to his knees when it's revealed that, he's been sleeping with his daughter, and it was just laughable. He's dropping to his knees, almost doing something as bad as Darth Vader's no. And then Copley's sitting there acting all whatever that is that he was doing. Yeah.
He's like, "My plan's complete. Let me put this gun in my mouth."
Yeah, and I think what was it? For the ending too, I always love the part in the original where it's a great scene where Ode Sue, finds out the truth, and when he realizes that, Maidu might find out, he drops to his knees, he begs for forgiveness, he begs, to do anything for her not to know, cuts his own tongue out, and, and it kind of changes your whole perception of, like, what's going on in this movie. And then there's a scene where the other main character visualizes when he was there for his sister's suicide, and then he kills himself. And I think that's a great scene. And in this one, he's like, "Well, I've waited 20 years to show you that you slept with your daughter," and puts a gun in his mouth and shoots. And it's like, ugh, like where was the satisfaction? And like, what was the point of that?
And how do they have so many security cameras everywhere watching him at all times?
Yeah, there was a security
in that random place they rented. Like, how did he know they were going to rent a place there?
Well, I think the cabin, didn't she say it was a friend's cabin, or
I don't know.
But still, yeah.
But they were on top of her life pretty well suddenly, like knowing everything. I mean, obviously, I guess they would. They'd be planning this thing for so long, but just the connections are very loose, extremely loose. And the movie's a poor shell of what the original is.
Yeah, the other thing I thought was stupid was his offer to him that if you can find this out, I'll turn in my own confession, and I'll give you, what was it, like
it's like $20 million worth of diamonds.
Diamonds?
Yeah.
I was like, diamonds. I'm like, other than, again, it felt like a cheesy Bond villain. Who the hell would want diamonds? What are you going to do with diamonds? Yeah. Then you got to try to get rid of these things. It's like, it seemed to me, it was like Dr. Evil coming up with a plan to get $1 million. Mm-hmm. It's like,
And in the original, it was 5 days, and in this one, it was 48 hours. And for some reason, I don't know, I felt like the mystery wasn't as like hard to figure out in this one. It was very like point A to point B. Like, it was very, they didn't do much like figuring out. Like, they went to the principal's house, found the yearbook, went to the school, and then went to his place. Like, I don't know, it didn't seem like that much of a mystery in this one. Everything kind of came pretty easily.
It seemed like, it didn't seem like the puzzle it was in the original. As we're in this one, it was just like, in the new one, it's like, they just kind of stumbled across these things, and then, all right, whatever. It's like, it is what it is. Now I found the warehouse. Now we kill a bunch of people with a hammer. And then it's like moving on to the next point. It's just, the plot points were so weak.
And even the way they revealed the incest was much better staged than the original, where he's kind of stalking them to see where they're going, and then he's watching through the hole in the window, and it was a much longer scene to establish what was going on.
Then those flashback scenes to their high school or to their boarding school or whatever.
Awful.
Where they're like, whore. Like, come on. Like, they're so bad. And speaking of whore, I thought it was ridiculous when Copley comes to kill Michael Imperioli, and he strangled him, and he's like, whore. Like, it was so cheesy and over the top.
Yeah, and he actually, in the original, he was there, like in the internet cafe, listening to the conversation, and just immediately reacted and killed him with a.
Yeah, I thought
which
that's a badass scene.
Yeah, I've always been curious though if you could actually stab somebody with a broken CD. That was pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Breaks the CD in half and then stabs him in the neck with it.
Happened to one of the Hellraisers.
So there's precedent there. So yeah, he immediately reacts, and well, in this one he's driving a car and apparently has to go there, and that was the way they tied in the tongue, cutting out from the.
Yeah.
But also that pissed me off too is they must have cut out his tongue, wrapped it up, and got it to that cemetery. Or where did they go that they find that?
It was at the school.
That was at the school.
Yeah, they got it there really quick in time for them to find it. Like,
well,
I mean, I don't know.
set
I
on
thought
the
it
hood
was
of the
really
car
quick.
and disappeared. Yeah, I don't know. They don't give you an exact timeline of, I don't know, because it was an overnight drive, obviously, for them to go to the school.
Yeah.
So, like, they cut out his tongue. And he's trying to
Took
make a phone call. And then, yeah,
in
probably.
there.
A really high-end helicopter, about 200 miles an hour. Yeah, could be done.
So did you guys, both of you, alluded to this earlier? Did you not like the idea of the fake movie studio with the Unsolved Mysteries?
I
Or did
hated
you
it.
not like the
Awful.
execution?
I thought it was
Because I actually
cheap.
thought the idea was pretty. That was the only thing in the entire movie that I liked that was different. I thought, okay, that's number one. It further throws the audience off the scent of what could be going on, and I believe that they would do that to him. Like if you're going to lock this guy up and you have all this money, you would have the resources to further jack with him and show him, because he wouldn't know what TV show is real or fake.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a nice addition. That was the only thing that I thought was a.
Yeah, I guess you're right. More of the execution is what I was disappointed with.
Yeah.
I
I don't know. A lot of people would have known about it, though, because it takes a lot of people to run a set. You're not going to, Copley's not going to run that studio by himself. Like, oh, I'm just going to film all this stuff. Obviously, he'd be bringing in groups of people, and there'd be other people knowing about all this stuff going on inside his movie studio.
Yeah, and I was wondering why people, like, I mean, this seemed to be a common, like, this was a real murder that people were supposedly acting and talking about. That was their real life. And, I don't know, I wondered why nobody was like, what does this have to do with Joe Doucette or whatever? And they're like, oh, well, don't worry, we're going to show this to him in a private prison so he can rape his daughter later. Oh, all right.
Yeah, well, I mean,
We're paying you. Don't ask questions.
Well, to have a
Get
film
out
set, yeah, you're not going to just run that by yourself. You're going to have a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, he paid actors to act
I
in it.
know. So, I don't know.
Those people would have questions, too, I think, what's going on. Unless they're just like, oh, any money's good money. I'll do it and keep my mouth shut.
But, I mean, looking in the original that he hears on the real newscast that his daughter was adopted because both of his parents are killed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never, like, I mean, it's never brought up. I mean, they never really bring it up again, and it's fine.
So the movie pretty much flopped, or did flop. I mean, it's
Wouldn't Elizabeth Olsen have known her history?
Apparently not.
Because she would have been like, Mom, my adopted parents told me I was adopted. My mother was murdered. My father disappeared for all these years. Wouldn't she have known those things?
She had a story for the mom, didn't she? They told her she was killed some other way. I just can't remember what it was.
So they never told her the truth.
Right.
That's terrible adopted parenting right there. Someday the kid needs to know. I don't know.
Well, maybe they didn't know because he said Copley took her, right?
Oh, that's right. Yes, he controlled it.
Yeah.
So at like 16, he adopted that girl and then controlled the rest of her life. Because I don't know, happened sometime around then.
What did you guys think of? I thought that was a weird twist that like it's like a happy ending, I guess, in the remake where he decides to, for the good of the country, lock himself back in prison.
Yeah, I thought that made no sense.
Yeah.
It was weak.
Because I liked in the original that after he learned this information and learned, they keep bringing up that comment like a grain of salt or a stone, it still sinks the same. That he did this small thing and it had these ramifications for another person that were a lot bigger than he thought, and now he has to live with the consequences of those actions. And I think they make the comment to him like, me and my sister still loved each other despite of everything. Could you and your daughter do the same thing? And, I thought that was a much more powerful ending that, he kind of has, you're not sure if his hypnosis works or it doesn't, and, he has to live with that. But in the original, it's like, well, I fucked up. Back to prison I go.
Yeah, it's screwed up enough that he gets himself hypnotized to basically stay dating his daughter. But, then, like you said, there's the look on his face right at the end. You don't really know if it even worked.
Yeah.
Which, that's another... She must be a really screwed up girl to stay with a guy who's like 20 years older than her, now has no tongue, is a mute, and she's got to take care of him for the rest of her life. But
it's hard to find a husband in Asia.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I didn't like how it went for this happy-go-lucky ending in the remake where he gives her diamonds and writes her a letter like, well, it's been a fun weekend, but I'll see you again. I'll never see you again. Here's some diamonds. And Elizabeth Olsen's like, how
touching. What a good guy.
I got to go fence these rocks.
It's the best one-night stand I've ever had. So, I don't know. It didn't feel...
It was weak?
It felt really weak. Made me upset. Yeah, the twist is that I felt fucked by the remake.
So do you think it flopped? Obviously, we've been tearing this apart for 40 minutes now. We all think it's a shitty movie. Do you think it flopped just because it's a shitty movie, or on top of that, the original fear also that this is just too out there for an American audience?
I don't think it's too out there for American audiences. I think it just flops because it's just bad. And, well, they didn't market it very well either.
No.
But, I mean, because, they market bad movies all the time, and then they make a couple $100 million somehow. Look at Thor 2.
Well, my friend who told me that I made up my mind that I was already going to hate it, they loved it when they saw the remake first. So, I mean, who knows? It's up, I guess it depends on your perspective of it, but... Yeah, I think it was marketed poorly. I think it was originally supposed to come out in October. And I think they released it. They released it on Thanksgiving weekend, which... That's
true, that's tough.
Which, I mean, I was busy Thanksgiving weekend, and I was with family, and, that's not a movie I would want to... Besides you guys, we're all busy Thanksgiving weekend. There's, no one else I'd want to see that. I can't think of anyone else I'd want to see that movie with.
Yeah, I tried to get my sister to go see it so I would have that viewpoint of someone who had never seen the original, but she knew what it was about, and she had no interest in it.
It's a hard sell. But, maybe if it came out, if it came out on its original time near Halloween, maybe, or if it came out maybe on a date when it had no other competition, it might have done a little better. But I think there was 3 or 4 other releases that came out the same weekend as Oldboy, and I don't think it stood a chance. And the Hunger Games was had recently come out. It was just the wrong time for it.
It's currently on Box Office Mojo. It's currently at $2.1 million domestic total.
Ooh.
Budget supposedly $30 million. So wow, it's a real hard bomb right there. Its foreign is only 1.9. So this movie is not done well everywhere.
No, that's a full-blown, legit flop.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like it might do okay on DVD.
Maybe, yeah.
But it's not going to recoup its losses, I don't think.
No, probably not. Plus, once the marketing budget's probably added in there.
Yeah.
It's probably a lot of money that they lost.
But even, did you see the thing that Spike Lee took heat for that graphic designer says he got ripped off by Oldboy?
No, I didn't see anything.
There's this thing online that a graphic designer wrote an open letter to Spike Lee that he was asked by a company to design posters for Oldboy, and he designed 4 posters and sent them in, and they ended up using them, and he never got paid or got credit for any of them. And Spike Lee's like, oh, I don't know anything about this.
So this thing's failing all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the soundtrack in this movie, too, by the way, I thought was generic and boring, and I love the soundtrack for the original. For some reason, I love it.
Yeah, the music's a key part in the original, I think.
Mm-hmm.
you've got that recurring theme from the music that would play out of the painting when they would
Yeah.
knock him out with the gas that keeps showing up.
Yeah, and did you notice that Copley would call him on the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9?
Yeah.
How could you could you get that
I don't
phone
know.
number? I don't know.
It's a crazy area code.
I guess, but yeah, and I think he gets I don't remember in the original, but I thought he gets like private calls, but he gets calls he gets multiple missed calls from or calls and missed calls from that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 number, and he just redials it during one scene and he picks it up, and it's like I don't understand why he didn't do that earlier on.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. The whole movie just
Poorly executed. Maybe the studio had Toonie Cooks in the kitchen too, and Spike Lee couldn't do what he wanted with it. I don't know. Maybe Spike Jonze should have directed this. It would have been better, probably.
I just think they should have got anyone.
Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe they did just get anyone,
Yeah.
and the only person who came to bat was Spike Lee on this. He's like, I'll do it, and then they were like, but we got all these plans for it, though. You got to do it. Because it is possible that the studio gave him tons of problems.
I just feel like they could have. I wouldn't mind if they tried to take it in a completely different direction and just started from scratch and tried to take some basic story elements, even the hallway fight and ending and everything, and just try to take it in a new direction. And they just try to keep all these memorable parts that people loved from the original and try to structure it in a modern day America, and it just didn't work. But yeah, I think I mentioned to you, it felt like someone kind of gave the whole story. Someone told the story to a film student or a filmmaker. They're like, well, here's how the original happens. It starts this way, guy gets kidnapped, then it ends with him, blah blah blah. And then they're like, well, try to make that movie. And they're like, oh, all right, just some loose notes. I don't know. Because I guess I read that Spike Lee and the screenwriter watched the movie together for I think for the first time after
So they'd never
they
seen
went
the
over
original?
the script. Yeah.
Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I think we can chalk this one up to a huge win for the original.
Yep.
To just foreign films in general.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, you guys got anything else?
Nope.
I think that dissects it pretty well. Stick
Yep.
with it. If you haven't seen it and you've listened all the way through now, you've kind of spoiled some of the big parts of the movie, but definitely check out the original. And if you have seen the original and have not seen the remake, just, in our opinion at least, get yourself ready for Crap Fest.
It's good for a few laughs, I guess.
I didn't even laugh. Oh, I laughed at a couple things. Laughed at Copley,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
I don't know if
If
it's
you want
worth
to see
a red
Elizabeth
box or
Olsen,
not.
well, actually, if you want to see Elizabeth Olsen, go see Martha Marcy. She gets naked in that too.
But yeah, I don't think there's anything redeemable about this movie.
No,
It's one of the worst of the year, actually, I think.
definitely.
I actually want Hypnosis to
forget
forget
it.
this movie.
Yeah. All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.